Thank you so much for being here. It looks like this is going to be a session in which you can play back in case that you need. But hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Catherine Shieh. My Chinese name is Shieh. And tonight we're going to talk about how can I actually make a change. We've already talked a lot about anti-racism. We've talked about privilege. We've talked about intersectionality. And then now we're actually going to think about and talk about in what ways do we want to take action and make change. So as I had mentioned, 我的名字是谢婉莹. As you can see here, 我以前有教书, 然后我有教书在大学. And here I've also worked in Asian American civil rights, and I've also worked in politics. So something that I oftentimes like to talk about when it comes to taking action is that there are 3 things that have to happen all at the same time for folks to feel like they have the ability and decision-making to make a change, right? 3 things have to happen at the same time. So this is not only for myself, this is not only for you, but this is also for other people as well. You need these 3 things to happen all at the same time. So as you can see, the first factor that you need is you need to have ability, right? Knowledge and skills. So what kinds of things do we need to have? Maybe you're really good at Excel. Maybe you're really good at talking to people. Maybe you don't like talking to people, but you love drawing and designing things, right? Thinking about what you're really good at and how you can bring that into actions that are not your day job, right? So does that relate to volunteering? Does that relate to protesting? Does that relate to being able to be on the board of a nonprofit, right? What abilities do you have? What are some strengths? What are you good at? So that's one thing that you need to have. That's factor. As a factor. The second thing is the motivation or the drive to act, right? So you might be good at something doesn't mean that you actually want to do it all the time. Just because you are good at talking to people does not necessarily mean that you want to actually canvas and talk to people on the street, which is okay, but you just need to know where your motivation is. So your drive to act. So something that I do want to ask very quickly is if you can just put in the chat, what drives you to want to make change, even when it's scary or uncomfortable? I'm going to write it in the chat as well. What drives you to take action, even when it is scary? So that's placed into the chat. This goes back to our motivation. I'm going to give us about a minute. I'm curious to see what kind of answers we type.
Kat, do you mind clarifying what kind of changes are we talking about here?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked. I made it very vague on purpose.
Got it.
Okay, so someone said to become a better professional. So in our day jobs, right? So that's also part of us making us look good and making us sound good, which is not a bad thing, right? Yeah, and this means that we have a better reputation at the end of the day for being a better professional, right? Those are the kinds of things that you want to be really clear about of what is your motivation to make change and to take action. When it looks like you said to fight discrimination, but why do you want to fight discrimination? What drives you to fight discrimination, even when fighting discrimination is scary? So I'm going to ask you to dig a little bit deeper, but thank you for starting us out here. Concern of safety. Yeah, so you're thinking about I want to think about what it means for me to be safe, people I love to be safe, etc., things like that, right? And that could come in a variety of different ways, right? I want to feel safe, which is why I want to build housing for people who are homeless, right? Because it makes me feel safer at the end of the day, and that's going to be my motivation, right? Thank you all very much for sharing here. So that's the second factor that we have. And the third is, do you actually have opportunities to be able to actually make a change? There are several opportunities that I want to place into the chat here. One is connections. Do you know people that can connect you to different opportunities so you can volunteer? So you can get to know a civil rights or non-civil rights nonprofit? Or do you know anybody who got you involved in Society of Heart's Delight? Right? So one is connections, like, do you know people? The other is, do you have the time? It's very difficult to have the time if you're the one who has to take care of children, if you're the one who has to cook and clean, if you're the one who can't seem to take time off in your professional work, right? So that's also, do you have the opportunity to actually have the time to be able to make change? Another, I will write here, is money. Money can come in a variety of different ways. Do you have enough money to have gas so you can actually drive to different opportunities? Do you have the money to be able to not work as many hours in your day job in order for you to volunteer? Do you have the money to send your kid to maybe volunteer, right? Like, so there's also that to like keep in mind as well. And so these are things that these are the things that I really want us to think about when it comes to opportunity, right? And the last one that I want us to think about is place. So if I'm not mistaken, many of us are in the Bay Area. I'm not currently in the Bay Area. I'm in Jijaga or Chicago, but I did grow up in Cupertino. And so opportunity has to do with where you live. Are there lots of nonprofits or volunteer opportunities near you? Can you go within a 20-minute drive? Are you able to be, in a place like the Silicon Valley, many people are connected to the internet, which is actually not the case for a lot of America. So even being able to like research things and find resources and see what's available in Santa Clara County, that a lot has to do with place. So with that said, as you can see here, we have 3 factors that help us figure out like how we can make change. Ability, what we're good at, motivation, right? Concern of safety, trying to fight discrimination, ooh, balloons. And third is like, do we have the connections, time, money, and place to be able to feel like we are able to do this? Something that I want to keep in mind. Do you have to feel confident in all 3 factors, ability, motivation, opportunity? No, you actually don't. When it comes to opportunity, do you have to have connections and time and money and place? It helps to have all 4, but you actually don't necessarily need all 4. So this is going to take a little while, but what I am going to ask you to do is you're going to place into the chat your ability, your motivation, and your opportunities. Your ability, motivation, and opportunity, you're going to place it into the chat. I'm going to do the same thing. And from there, hopefully that will help us reflect into what kinds of actions we can take to make change. So I'll give us about 2 minutes to place it into the chat.
Hey, Kat.
Hi.
I'm not sure if everyone is able to type in the chat versus, speaking on the,
Okay.
yeah, would that
Okay.
be easier?
Yeah. If we want to get some people off mute, yeah, I would love to hear from a couple people if you'd like. I also put myself as an example in the chat in case you want to read it. But if there's anyone who wants to actually just verbally share, Nicole, thanks for that. Yeah. Does anybody want to verbally share?
I'm reading your example right now.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I would be willing to verbally share. I don't know.
Yeah, let's have you share. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to type what you share into the chat so people can also follow along.
All right.
So tell us about your ability. What do you think you're good at, Nicole?
I think in terms of making a change, I'm good at the strategy part.
Yeah, sounds great. And like, again, like we need everybody doing all sorts of things. So yeah, totally. Okay, so motivation, what drives you to want to act or to act?
Other than what we talked about, I really want to be someone who's helpful for others. And that means that from a self-interest perspective, I want to leave a legacy. And from the perspective of community building, I want to be a helpful, a useful member of the community to other people in the community.
I really appreciate the fact that you said like you have a self-interest part, because just because you have a self-interest part doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing. Like if you want to leave a legacy, let's make that happen, right? Like it's okay to think about yourself in all of these things. Beautiful. And then what kind of opportunities can you think of? Connection, like do you have connections? Do you have time? Do you have money? Do you have place? And again, you don't need to have all four, but it's just good to like think about what you do have and what you don't have.
I think I have the privilege of living in the Bay Area with access to a lot of resources, with access to a lot of other people who are similar minded.
Mhm.
I do have access to resources. I also think I have access to learn about how to make a change. As I said, I'm good at the strategy part, but I'm not really necessarily good at the implementation part.
Which is, yeah, which is totally fine, right? Like, I think part of being able to like do this exercise of saying what you're good at and what motivates you and what privileges and opportunities you do have is that like, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not asking you to like have all these three like in like the most robust way. You don't even need to have all four types of opportunities, right? But we just need to really sort of evaluate what we do and what we don't have, right? So you said like, I'm good with strategy. I think I could work on implementation. That's totally fine. Then let's try to find an action. Let's try to find a way you can make change where we can work on the strategy part, because you said that's what you're good at, right? And then even for when, right? Like, I think I might be good at encouraging people. Okay, then let's go find an opportunity where you get to do that, right? Someone said motivation. I want everyone, including myself, other people, have a fair chance to pursue their dreams. Totally. Even when things get scary and even when things get hard, go back to your motivation. Even when you feel tired, think back to your ability and think to yourself, no, there are things that I'm good at and there are things I have to offer. And when it comes to opportunity, remember that the world is ever changing. None of these things are static. Money, time, place, people, they're changing all the time. And so I'd like to think that we just have chances over and over again, right? But thank you, Nicole, for sharing. How did that feel?
I really like this framework. It feels very structural and it helps me to build a tree where the branches are how I can dig deeper into what I have and what I can improve on. So
Nice. I really like that you talk about it like a framework, because that is sort of like a framework. Like if it's hard to sort of think about all the theory, at least you kind of have a checklist like for yourself right here. And I think it's also important to be reminded, this is also why it's so easy for us to think other people can't make change. because we don't realize that you need 3 factors: ability, motivation, and opportunity. It also shows that if you want to motivate others to make change, to know their ability, to know their motivation, to know their opportunities, it actually means you have to get to know people really well in order to try to, like, you know, push them to make a change. So this is not only for you to think about yourself, but also to really think about, like, why it takes more effort to get others to push, to take action and make change as well. Thank you a lot for that, Nicole. And not only am I saying, like, make a change, there are lots of different types of change, as you can see here. There's the individual change, kind of like what Nicole was saying, like, you know, a framework to, like, build on, you know, think about, like, what I have and what I don't have. Like, do I want to work on myself? That's the individual, right? Then we have our relationships. Like, I like to think of them like the inner circle, like the people we're generally pretty close with. Then we have community, right? Whether that's our schools, where we live, where we work, right? A lot of acquaintances here. And then society, living in America, living in California. What kind of rules do you follow or not follow, right? I really like even the fact that Nicole has said, like, being in the Bay Area means that there are lots of opportunities or access to be able to learn how to make a change. Yeah, that's not available in like 43 states in America, right? Like, where they outright ban trainings like this. Then you start to see in what ways they're sort of like policy and society's norms that really sort of box us in. So what I'm going to ask you to place into the chat, or you can verbally share, which one do you think you want to try moving forward in terms of making a change? Which one do you want to try going forward? Which one do you want to try and, like, make a change in? I'm going to put mine down. I'm curious to see what other people have. So I put myself. Is there anyone who wants to verbally share? Which one do they want to try moving forward? And again, you can also place into the chat if you prefer. Otherwise, you can get off mute and verbally share. Okay, sounds good. Wen, thank you very much for placing it into the chat. It looks like you're thinking about, like, community and relationships as well. Yeah, sounds great, right? And this is something that I really like to refer back to, of there are lots of different ways to make a change. Where do I sort of want to make that impact, right? You don't have to change the world. Maybe you just want to change your neighborhood. Maybe you want to change your street. Maybe you want to change your family. We need everyone doing all sorts of actions to make a change. You don't have to do all of it. We just need everybody doing all sorts of things. And so, as you can see here, as I was saying, we need all sorts of people doing all sorts of actions to make a change. This is exactly what this diagram is for. That we are making change ourselves, within ourselves and within the people around us. And also systems change is like the, I'm going to just flip back here. It's sort of the societal one. Systems change, right? Where, like, policy and laws change. Also community, like there are school codes, there are school laws, right? School boards make rules for us. Neighborhood watches and HOAs make rules for us. Workplace has HR that makes rules for us. Churches have rules, right? So that's what I mean by systems change right here. So we sort of have, like, the individual change, the individual and relationship part. And then we have, as you can see, the systems change, which right here is the societal and community. We need all of these things to be happening at the same time in order for us to make lots of different change. And we call this collective change. And so there are lots of different actions for you to take. And what I really like about this is oftentimes there are people who will say to me, oh, well, I've like read all the books about anti-racism and privilege. Oh, I've like gone to trainings like this, but I still don't know how to make a change, or it doesn't make me feel very good. And now I'm burnt out, I'm tired, I don't want to try to make a change anymore. And what I oftentimes answer is this. That's because every type of action, every type of way to make a change kind of has like a spectrum. As you can see, there are like short-term, instant things you can do to make a change, like donating, as you can see on the bottom left, or long-term change, such as like actually like starting a new career, right? Like there's some instant things you can do and there's some long-term things you can do. And it's nice to have a mix of both. But also at the same time, what we have here is that we have less interaction with people, such as like reading the news or reading books, right? Like you're not really like talking to anyone, you're not processing with anyone. And then versus like more interaction where you actually have community, you have groups like these where you can really test out your ideas and work on a project together, things like that. So what I'm going to ask you to do here is you're going to look at this chart. What things do you currently do on this chart? And what things do you want to do or learn more about? I'm going to place mine into the chat as well. What things do you currently do? And what things would you like to do or that you're curious about? And you're going to place it in this chat. And then in about 45 seconds, I'm going to ask if anybody wants to get off mute.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah. What do you currently do? And what would you like to do or be curious of anything that's on this chart? So I put myself as an example here. So these are all different types of actions. I put one of the actions here, as you can see on the bottom left. I am on a board of directors for a nonprofit. And so like that is an action of making change that I currently do make. And something that I would like to do more is I haven't really looked into mutual aid groups, and I'd like to learn more about them. And that's the second question. Does that answer what you were wondering, Nicole?
Yes, I was curious about some of the things. Yeah. For example, what is mutual aid network?
Beautiful. So that's part of the question. You're going to write whatever it is that you're curious about, and that's going to be the thing that you're going to like work on moving forward.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. So sounds like you and I will be working on the same thing, mutual aid network. Sounds great. Perfect. Yes. No, thank you for clarifying, Nicole. What actions on this chart are you currently doing? What things would you like to be doing or don't know about, want to learn more? And I'm going to ask you to like really commit to that. So it looks like Nicole has already told us that they're thinking about mutual aid networks. And so Nicole now has like something on their to-do list, which is to Google what it is and find some in the Bay Area. Does anybody else want to place anything into the chat? Would anybody like to get off mute and verbally share? Okay, it looks like Gwen is saying I'm currently volunteering at Society of Heart's Delight, right? So like, for example, that's sort of like a longer term investment and kind of like in the middle when it comes to interaction. Someone did say I'm currently working on an AI startup and sort of like learning. And Dong, what I really want you to think about is like in terms of like making change, it's going to be on this chart somewhere. So think about something you want to select on this chart. Someone did say they're curious about an anti-racism working group, right? So that's something that's like more interaction. You'd be working with a lot more people. Beautiful. So when it looks like you'll like commit to that moving forward, checking up what are some anti-racism working groups in the Bay Area. I will tell you right now, I know a lot more of them in Berkeley and San Francisco, but they do exist in Santa Clara County. And Michelle could actually point you to them. But the program both Michelle and I did was called APOLY. And so they might be a good place to start. Would anybody else like to share? Get off mute. Curious about new career here? Yeah. Maybe this means you don't work in a hospital anymore and ends up that you want to work at a dog shelter. Maybe this means that you don't want to work at an AI startup anymore and you end up wanting to work for the city of San Francisco. I have a very close friend of mine who was a software engineer at Apple, and she just moved over to like the technology department for the city of San Francisco, city and county of San Francisco. She likes it a lot more than she did at Apple, right? So that's really what I mean by a new career. And I think one of the tricky things, especially in a place like the Bay Area in which it's so expensive, some people say, well, I'm never going to try on a new career because I won't make as much money. And I always say, you'd be really surprised. Even when it comes to change making, even when it's frustrating, you can find a lot of money. It might be a little bit more difficult to find, but the money is there. You just kind of have to find like the right people, the right places, the right opportunities, the right careers to be able to sort of like try on a new job. And as Nicole said, if anybody wants to unmute, going once, going twice. All right. So this is the question that I asked you. Is there anything you currently do and anything you don't know about and what you want to like learn more about? I'm actually going to ask you to actually look into what an anti-racism working group is, what a mutual aid network is. I want you to actually Google or search on Facebook what those Facebook groups are, where you can learn about ways to make a change in the Bay Area. So as you can see through this, ideally, you'd be looking for something from each quadrant, right? So just going back to this is that you don't need to do all these things, but you want to have a mix of them, right? So for example, I really like the fact that I have like a board of directors, and I also really like the fact that I have Facebook groups because they kind of like tune into different parts of my brain. And I also volunteer. So this way, like I never really get that bored. I also do a little bit of organizing at work. We don't have a union yet, but we will have an ERG, an employee resource group, right? And so really being able to think about in what ways, like I never feel like too tired, because if I'm tired of organizing, I'll just do less of it, but then I'll like be more active in my board. Or if I get really sick of the board, I'll volunteer a little more. So then this way, I always feel like I'm doing something without feeling too burnt out of any one action. And so with that being said, this one ended a little bit more early. And so I'm going to stop my share. And now is a great time for us to be asking, do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Now is the time in which I really want to make sure that I sort of give a space as to what I can do to be able to support in your journey to making action, making change, making the Bay Area or the world a better place to live in. So does anybody have any questions or comments? You can either place it into the chat or you can unmute yourself.
I think we just got one person joining us. Hi, so we just finished the presentation, but right now it's opening up the floor for questions. Cat has a lot of experience in. Would you like to describe the field that you are experienced in? I just know that you do a lot of work with the civil people.
Yeah, so I've had lots of different jobs. I have worked for politicians. I have been a public school teacher. I have worked in Asian American civil rights, where I specifically worked on anti-Asian violence. And now I'm in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how do we make our workplaces better places to work in, and hopefully make them less racist where we work? So those are all of the worlds that I kind of been in, and that's my day job. That's what I do to get paid, right? In terms of what I do outside, right? Like thinking about that matrix again, that chart or that graph. As I had mentioned, I am on a board of a nonprofit. In which Nicole, even you said like you really like strategy. Being on the board of a nonprofit is literally strategy, right? Strategy and budget and operations. I volunteer for the dog shelter here in the city of Chicago. They actually don't have enough staff, so they depend on a lot of volunteers. As I had mentioned, I've organized employee resource groups in my workplace. And I'm also on like a lot of Facebook groups about disability. And so those are kinds of the things that I do. And those are like unpaid things that I do outside of my day job. So someone said, it's okay. Catherine, can you give me some advice on how to engage my friends and family in civic engagement? This goes back to the very same thing that I had started out with: ability, motivation, opportunity. And the reason why I say this is because I want to be mindful of people in which like English may not necessarily be their first language, so they don't feel as confident talking to people. Or thinking about the fact that there are some folks who like have a lot of their time stripped away from them because they have a really stressful job. So like there are ways in which like it kind of feels like there's things that are stopping us from wanting to take action and make change, right? And so that's why when you want to like talk to your friends and family in civic engagement, figure out what their abilities are. Think about what they're really good at. Oh, I noticed that you don't really love talking to people. You're a little bit of an introvert, but I definitely noticed that you are an incredible reader. You know so much stuff. You are so good at storing knowledge. We do need those kinds of people. Right? Even thinking about people's motivation. Sometimes this means like really like asking them like, why do you work so hard? What kind of life are you trying to make for your children? Right? You can talk about yourself and like what motivates you, and ask them what motivates them. Like you have to really get to know people to find out their abilities, to find out their motivation, and then also find out their opportunities of like, oh, you have extra money, you should donate, right? You can fundraise for people, or you clearly have time. Let's do something about that. Right. And then from there, we kind of like fit people based off their abilities, motivations, and opportunities. And then we start suggesting things to them. Otherwise, like oftentimes, if I'm just kind of like Nicole, you should go protest. And Nicole's like, I'm not that kind of person. I need to respect that. Right. And so that's why we need to like get to know people really well. So then as I get to know people, I'll be like, hey, Nicole, I actually think you'd be a really good moderator for an event based off of like what you've shared with me, based off of the way that you run events in the past, based off of your, like how you're motivated in society of hearts delight, right? Like you get to know people. So then you kind of like tailor a personalized suggestion of ways to make change. And kind of like what I said, there's also like levels to it, right? Which is kind of complicated. There's individual, there's like relationships, there's community, right? And so some people really could not care less about California politics, but they care a lot about their school district. Okay, fine. Then go work on the school district part. You don't have to worry about the California part. Some people really care a lot about like US, Taiwan, China relations. Okay, great. Then work on that. Right? So then we start to sort of tailor what kind of level that they want to be on as well. Yeah, you do need to know people really well, which also means that it takes a lot of time. You are not going to figure out everybody in 45 minutes, and that is okay. You don't change years of racism in 45 minutes. It takes a few sort of ways to sort of chip at people, get to know them a little more, and then you kind of like slither in and start making suggestions. And then you can model with yourself of being like, oh yeah, I like just loved volunteering with the preschool today, right? And then people start to get interested, and then you get to know them more, so you can start suggesting things. Thank you for that one. Hopefully that helps you. It's what I've been using. I will not give you advice that I don't take myself. Does anybody else have any comments or any questions? And you can get off mute or you can type it into the chat.
Yeah, for example, in your experience volunteering for SHD, that's the abbreviation. Yeah, for SHD, was there any time that you feel like, oh, you're not sure how to do something in another way? Maybe you're not sure how effective something is. Maybe there was an emotional impact on you. Things like that. Yeah, I'm trying to get people to think about their specific cases. Yeah, I feel like today we talked a lot about the theories. We didn't really talk a lot about specific examples. Does anyone have anything to share or ask? Can I ask a question that I wanted to ask last time, actually? So last time, for people who weren't here, we were talking about intersectionality and pluralism, which means that intersecting identities and experiences of individuals to promote inclusivity, which means the world accepts different values, different systems, different backgrounds, different perspectives, and so on. So last time I had a question. We were talking about individual identities versus, community identity. So for example, me as a Chinese, a Chinese girl who studied and currently working in the United States versus community interest, meaning other Chinese people or other overseas students. How do I balance those two to maximize the commonalities, or to find the commonalities, or to maximize my voice?
Yeah, this is going to sound like a strange answer. Maybe you don't need to balance it.
Okay.
You can if you'd like to. Maximizing impact, I wouldn't worry so much about. Just think about what you're good at and what you like to do, which I guess goes back to ability and motivation, right? But if you try to balance it and that's kind of not where your heart is in all of this, then it's very hard to like feel like you're maximizing your impact, and it's hard to ever feel like you're good enough in terms of like trying to like center people, help other people, help yourself. So if you feel more of an affinity with people who are overseas and building that community, you should follow that. If you feel more of an affinity for people who are here in the United States, go follow that. And also, like, I'm also not saying like it's one or the other. Like, for the rest of your life, you're probably going to change your mind over and over again, and that's totally fine, right? Because we are complex people. Our minds change, our passions change. But you don't have to be everything to everyone.
Got it. So so I don't necessarily have to balance the two, but instead I find what makes me more
Happy?
happy. All right.
Because you'll just naturally try And you'll naturally just like really want to excel at it
Right.
if it's something that you love. And again, it's not just one or the other. You don't pick one and that's what you do for the next 30 years. You might change your mind next year. Awesome, great. Change your mind. Go ahead, right? Like, don't worry. The world has plenty of problems. You can pick one whenever you'd like.
Yeah, yeah. Today we talked about the 4 levels of change: individual, relationship, community, and societal. So
Yeah.
that made me think, how to pick what to fight for. And it seems like your answer is what makes you happier.
Yeah. What makes you happy? I mean, even thinking about sort of like the things that you read in the news, is there anything that interests you a little bit more than other things? For me, it's always been education. How about for you?
Oh, to answer your question, yes, it's actually also education.
Then
It's
that's the thing you pick.
and it's a vast field. There are
It is
so
a vast field, and then you'll figure it out from there.
right.
Do you prefer K-12, preschool and young kids, or do you prefer college and grad school? Which one do you, of the three, which one do you prefer?
Even post-graduation, right?
Sounds great. Beautiful. Like, do you see, like, we've literally already picked literally in a matter of 15 seconds. Great. So based off of what you were saying, like postgraduate school, education, in that sort of levels, like individual relationships, community, right? Like, which level do you think that is?
Which level? I think it's community.
Yeah, I would say so as well. Great. Boom. Done.
That was easier than I thought.
Yeah. But it's cool that we got to like demonstrate it, like, right, like in front of people, so to say. And again, just as a quick review, Nicole, do you have to stick to this for the next 30 years?
No, because I can change, the world can change, and the community
Yeah.
can change too.
Exactly. Do you have to stick with it for the next 5 years? No. Do you have to stick with it for the next year? No. You get to decide all those things. And don't worry, the world is like plenty messed up. You can change whenever you want, and there's going to be work waiting for you.
And yeah, there's also a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of things that we can do. That's very exciting, actually.
Yeah, totally. Which is also really funny to say, right? Because it's like, oh, wow, the world is like literally dying and I'm excited for the opportunities, right? But that also goes to show that like trainings like these do work. That don't worry, we need all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. So thank you for your curiosity, Nicole, and thank you for your curiosity one. Do you have any other questions for me, Nicole, or does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I'll give the mic to whoever wants to talk or type.
Dong, thank you very much.
I'm going to share the slides in the chat.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Amazing.
people can refer to it.
Sounds great. Yes. And that I really like always referring back to these slides, right? Just the way that you did of like kind of like what level of change that you want to like think about and do. And also, if you need examples of making change, that's why you go back to that chart, right? With like the mutual aid group and the anti-racism working group and the organizing and the board of directors and donating. Like those are examples of actions to be able to make a change, right? So I also like to refer back to that chart in case I run out of ideas.
Are you guys able to open that up? It has edit in the URL, so I wasn't sure.
It looks like there's a few people who are on it. So awesome.
Awesome. So for people who didn't attend previous sessions, this is the four session series.
Yeah, this is all 4 sessions.
Yeah, the slides are colored differently, so you can tell.
Exactly. Yep. Glad that you know the way I work. Beautiful. Is there anything else? All right then. So if there's no other questions and no other comments, I just want to say I really appreciate you being able to show up, being open to learning, not only this lesson, but like all the lessons that there are in this slide deck. And I really hope that you are able to take these lessons to not only think about how you can change yourself, but also in what ways you can really influence others. And I'm really excited to see what kinds of changes and what kinds of sort of knowledge you can sort of pass on to other folks, because we need lots of people like you. We need lots of people in the Bay Area to be able to have a lot of these kinds of really important conversations and to really motivate people to make a change. So I just want to say thank you all very much, and I wish you the best of luck in all of this.
Oh, we want to thank you as well, Kat. It's been a pleasure. And I encourage everyone to read the slides. It's a lot of content. And it has a lot of frameworks. It has a lot of examples. So yeah, if those echo with you, that would be awesome. If you have anything that you want to share right now, go ahead and unmute yourself or type in the chat. Yeah, I started to see thank you notes.
Yeah, no, I always appreciate those. And thank you for thank you for engaging. Thank you for that, Olivia. I appreciate the kind words.
All right. Yeah, I think we can finish here.
Okay, sounds great. Well, have a good night, everyone. I know we're finishing a little early, but you all have the slides. And I am connected to both Michelle and Nicole. So this doesn't mean that my time with Society of Heart's Delight is ending, right? I can always be a connection or a resource to you all. So again, best of luck. Thank you so much and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks, everyone. We will see you in the next event. Bye.